The Archivist's Records, Entry 8, The Aetherblighted Continent. Greetings, Nixari. In previous records, I spoke of Aetherblight, the slow transformation of a region through prolonged exposure to Aether, a process measured not in days nor months but generations. Today, however, we must consider a far more unsettling possibility. What happens when such change is not confined to a valley? A forest? A mountain range? What happens when an entire continent begins to transform? The answer lies within a place known simply as the Aetherblighted continent. Of all the regions within the known world, none has attracted more attention from researchers studying Aetherblight, and few have generated more questions. The continent did not begin as it exists today. This much is certain. Ancient records describe landscapes that differ significantly from those observed now. Forests once stood where crystal fields now grow. Rivers flowed along courses that no longer exist. Species recorded in early surveys have vanished. Others have appeared in their place. The transformation was neither sudden nor catastrophic. It was gradual, patient, the kind of change that often escapes notice until it has already reshaped the world. The earliest indications appear to have been increased rift activity, not enough to alarm observers, not enough to suggest disaster, simply more frequent than neighboring regions. At first, little attention was paid. Rifts were already considered part of life upon Aethyris. A few additional appearances seemed unremarkable. Then came the Scarlands, isolated at first, small, scattered, permanent reminders that unusual events had occurred. The land began to change. Subtly, slowly. The first signs were easy to dismiss. The second were more difficult. The third, impossible. As centuries passed, distortion fields began appearing with greater frequency. Travelers reported unusual phenomena. Researchers documented inconsistencies. Maps required revision, then revision again and again. Something was happening. No one could explain it. Yet the evidence continued to accumulate. The continent was changing, not through violence, not through conquest, not through disaster, through exposure. Generation after generation, century after century, Aether accumulated within the land. The process accelerated, and eventually the region entered what modern scholars would recognize as widespread Aetherblight. Today, the effects are visible nearly everywhere. Forests unlike any found elsewhere upon Aethyris. Crystal formations of extraordinary scale. Wildlife adapted to conditions unknown beyond the continent's borders. Mineral deposits possessing unusual properties. Entire ecosystems that operate according to patterns researchers are still attempting to understand. To walk upon the Aetherblighted continent is to observe a world that has become something different. Not ruined, not broken, different. This distinction remains important. Many first-time visitors arrive expecting devastation. They expect decay, collapse, evidence of a world dying. What they find instead is a world transformed. Life thrives there. Cities endure. Trade continues. Communities adapt. The continent remains inhabited. Its people do not consider themselves victims of the transformation. For many, the transformed landscape is simply home. The only home they have ever known. Among scholars, debate remains constant. Why this continent? Why here? Why not elsewhere? No answer has achieved universal acceptance. Some argue that centuries of elevated rift activity are responsible. Others believe deeper factors are involved. Still others insist that the process remains too poorly understood for meaningful conclusions. The evidence supports many theories. It confirms remarkably few. Another question continues to trouble researchers. Could it happen elsewhere? If one continent changed, could another? No definitive answer exists. The uncertainty has inspired both concern and fascination. Entire Ithari expeditions continue to investigate the region. New observations are added to the archives each year. Yet despite generations of study, the fundamental mystery remains unresolved. The transformation occurred. The transformation continues, but the reasons remain elusive. Perhaps that is what makes the continent so important, not merely as a place, but as evidence, proof that Aetherblight is capable of reshaping entire worlds, or at least entire portions of them. The Aetherblighted continent stands as a living record, a demonstration of change measured across centuries, a reminder that the forces shaping Aetheris rarely operate according to mortal timelines. The world changes, often quietly, often slowly, and sometimes by the time the change becomes obvious, it has already become permanent. The watchers continue their observations, the researchers continue their studies, the explorers continue their journeys, and the continent continues its transformation. One season at a time, one generation at a time, 1 century at a time. For now, only one conclusion appears certain. The Aetherblighted continent is not a warning, nor is it a promise. It is simply evidence. Evidence of what can happen when a land spends centuries becoming something new.